I'm Any New Province, and we're playing Box's White Weenie for Net Benefits, the series where we explore the benefits of net decking in Pauper. White Weenie is a classic Magic archetype that's played in old school Magic to this day. It's all about casting low-cost white creatures, going wide, and pumping them up with Anthem effects to kill your opponent as quickly as possible. Magic Online player Box has a resilient take on the White Weenie deck with evasion and life gain so that they don't get burned out and they don't have their aggression stopped by a single Augur Bolas. I'll start by explaining the bread and butter of this White Weenie build. It has 8 2-mana token producers so that it can explode onto the battlefield and start threatening lethal with an Anthem as soon as possible. First we have Gather the Townsfolk, which costs 1 and a white to create 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. This is how this spell will usually be cast, but in a fateful hour, if you have 5 or less life, you can create 5 of those tokens instead. We also have Raise the Alarm, which costs 1 and a white to create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. This doesn't have the ability of looking a little bit like Secure the Wastes like Gather the Townsfolk does, but you can cast it at instant speed. Next we have the spells that produce tokens with evasion. These are a lot better at closing out the game because it's harder for our opponent to just throw a butt in front of them. Half of this package is Triplicate Spirits, which costs 4 white for a sorcery with Convoke, which means your creatures can help you cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 generic mana or 1 mana of that creature's color. We have so many tokens running around, we'll hardly ever pay 6 mana for this. When you cast Triplicate Spirits, you create 3 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. The second half of this evasive token package is Battle Screech, one of my favorite token producers in the format. It costs 2 white for a sorcery that creates 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. Pretty good rate for a common, but you can also flash back Battle Screech by tapping 3 untapped white creatures you control. That's pretty awesome. We're going to have 3 untapped white creatures on the battlefield more often than not, so this almost represents 4 birds for 4 mana. It's pretty risky to commit a ton of 1/1s to the board, especially when meta decks are playing main board Electrickeries. That's why we have a ton of payoffs for creatures either entering the battlefield or even getting in just a single great attack in a game. First, we have our life gain payoffs in the form of Soul Sisters. The first one is Soul Warden. It costs 1 white for a 1/1 that says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Our other 3 Soul Sisters are Soul's Attendants. They are also 1 mana 1/1s that gain you a life when the creature enters the battlefield, but you may gain that life. I can't see you ever saying no to it though. Our other payoffs come in the form of making our creatures bigger. I mentioned having a risk with Electrickery in some decks' main boards, but this first card helps shore up that risk. It's Veteran Armorer. It costs 1 and a white for a 2/2 that says other creatures you control get +0/+1. That means we're defended against the first Electrickery, and if our opponent only has 1 Augur Bolas on the battlefield, we don't mind attacking into it with only 2 1/2s. We have 2 Ramosian Rallies, which also defend our creatures from Electrickery because it gives all of them +1/+1 until end of turn. Usually it costs 3 and a white to play this instant speed spell, but if you control planes, you may tap an untapped creature you control rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Our best Anthem effect is Guardian's Pledge. It costs 1 white for an instant that gives white creatures you control +2/+2 until end of turn. It's got a restrictive cost, so it's hard to cast Guardian's Pledge in any deck that isn't mono white. Finally, we have a single copy of Rally the Peasants, which costs 2 and a white and gives creatures we control +2/+0 until end of turn. You can flash it back out of your graveyard for 2 and a red, but we don't run very much red mana. Still, getting to cast this card twice in a single turn will certainly end the game for our opponents. Decks like this certainly struggle with generating card advantage, so we've included a few spells in white that do exactly that. First we have Squadron Hawk, which costs 1 and a white for a 1/1 flyer, which is very anemic, but it says, when Squadron Hawk enters the battlefield, you may search your library for up to 3 cards named Squadron Hawk, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. That's a 2 mana draw 3, that's great. We're also running everyone's favorite white Muldrifter, Thraben Inspector. It costs 1 white for a 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, it creates a clue, which means you create a token that you can pay to and sacrifice to draw a card. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. First, we have 2 Boros Garrisons. We are a little low on mana to cast our 4-drops on time, so adding a couple of Karus helps us cheat on lands a little bit to include more token producers. Boros Garrison enters the battlefield tapped, makes you return a land you control to your hand. When it becomes untapped, it taps for red and white. That's critical. It'll help us flash back that Rally the Peasants. Our only other non-basic lands are Secluded Steppes. They enter the battlefield tapped, and when they become untapped, they can add a white mana. That seems really bad, and it would be unless they had the cycling ability. You can pay 1 white and pitch this Secluded Steppe if you're just looking for more action and don't need any more lands. Finally, we have 16 basic planes. You definitely want a lot of untapped white sources in this deck. You want to hit a Soul Sister on turn 1, a Token Producer on turn 2, and maybe even your first Anthem on turn 3. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First we have Pay No Heed. It's 1 white to prevent all damage a source of your choice would deal this turn. It's going to catch those Rolling Thunders and those Kiln Fiends, maybe even an ATOG. We have a Lumathread Fielder 2. This is to give our creatures another +0/+1 if our opponents are heavy on the Electrickery or maybe like Pestilence plan. We have 3 Gut Shots for killing a Tireless Tribe after our opponent has flipped its toughness and pitched their whole hand to it. We have 2 Journey to Nowheres as catch-all removal for something like maybe Gurmag Angler. We have 2 Beckon Apparitions for instant speed ways to deal with Tron's Ghostly Flicker. We have 3 Patrician Scorn for blowing up all those Boggles auras, and we have 2 Celestial Flares just in case our opponent's on a deck that only has something that can attack on its own, like Gurmag Angler. And there it is, Boxes White Weenie. Congratulations again on your top 8 finish in the Pauper Challenge. We're going to take this deck live into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince. We're there every Monday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time playing competitive Pauper decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you, you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Monday night.